Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name's Susan, and tonight's version of Live Trends with a Spiritual Twist is about Halloween. If you don't know me, my name's Susan. I am a spiritual mentor for awakening women. I was born clairvoyant. I had a hell of a time growing up, and I manifested dark night of the soul after dark night of the soul, trying to figure out how do I integrate this. I had really grown to believe I was crazy and broken and weird. And it wasn't until a near-death experience in the summer of 2017 that everything changed. I finally did see my own life, the same life I'd always lived, clearly, finally. And I could easily see my purpose and the value in all of these darkest times. And that kind of leads me to tonight's topic, which is Halloween. This is a holiday that has become pretty dumbed down. If you guys are here, let me know, drop an emoji. I'd love to see who I've got with me. And I'd also love to hear your opinions. So, not sure if you guys know, the roots of Halloween were actually from the Celtic culture, and they celebrated this ending of summer into the fall and the winter. And it was a celebration where it was going from light to dark. So it was a celebration that honored the dark, but it's not the dark in the ghoulish way we've kind of come to celebrate it today. It is and was the dark in terms of the depths of our character, the depths of our spirit, and all that becomes illuminated when we do go within. Hey, Sue, I'm so glad you're here. This is a new series I'm doing. It's really different than anything I've done before. Typically, I'm on Facebook. I have a women's group, and it's called Divining Women. There are links to it in my channel banner, and I'll link to it after this live cast. That's really a different group. And in that group, we support each other and we cheerlead each other and we explore each other's spiritual gifts and our soul's purpose. And this series here, this is really a departure for me, but there is a part of my purpose that I know is to catalyze. And what I like to do is, with complete respect and with a lack of religion and a lack of politics, but just looking at events that are current and relevant today, but through a timeless spiritual lens. And the topics I'm going to cover, I'm sure they will ruffle a little bit of feathers, but I always do it in love and with complete respect. I do think it's so important for us. And I know if you're watching this channel, like I know you are. So I know you're a light worker. I know you want to grow into your most expanded self. Everyone who crosses my path, we're all attracted to each other for this reason. We want to grow along spiritual lines. We want to get to know ourselves the best we can. We want to manifest the brightest life we can. Yeah, I know, right? Sue, I can tell that. There's no way we'd even come together if you weren't a light worker and you did not have that intention at your core. And I look at Halloween and it just seems like this. Let me know if you agree. It seems to have become almost like a loophole or a get out of jail free card for these more fragmented parts of ourselves that maybe we're not as comfortable sharing. I know for me, when I was in college, I have had so many dark nights of the soul. I stopped drinking 18 years ago. I had to. In that dark night of the soul, let me tell you, in college, I was a mess. I felt it. I felt like on the inside, I was built of garbage. And this is coming from, at that point, it was from when I was a kid, when I was seeing everything I was seeing clairvoyantly, yet being told I wasn't seeing what I was seeing. Or, Susan, you have such a wild imagination. Go to your room. I did not know how to integrate that. And so I really deeply grew to believe I was crazy and that I was broken and that you could not know the real me or else you'd leave. That belief. And we've all got those twisted beliefs. And if you feel comfortable sharing, I would love you to write those in the comments, because I do want this to be a discussion. And there is such power in sharing these things out. There is such power in watching yourself be accepted. I know I was terrified to begin speaking aloud about everything I'd purposely camouflaged. But I did promise God I would go for it. And I am not into religion. I just love God, no religion. But I did promise God during that near-death experience, I would live transparently. I would talk about all of this, which is everything I used to hide. And in college, I was so aware of this divide on the inside. I felt like a dressed up trash can. I felt it to my core. I felt so mangled. I felt like I was literally play acting all the time, that I could not be my true self with anyone. And let me tell you, that takes such a toll on one's spirit, living inauthentically in that way. And I remember for one Halloween in particular, my costume was so degrading, but it was because it reflected the way I felt about myself. It was an outward reflection of how I felt inside. One year, I went to all the festivities as a personified the morning after. I had like makeup smeared all over my face. My hair was a mess. I was wearing like a guy's button-up shirt over a long dress. It was so perfect at the time. Though at the time I actually thought it was just funny. I was like, oh, that's so funny. But really, that was like such a reflection of how I actually felt. And I don't know if any of you guys, especially you women, like we are so, I think, a little bit naturally closer to our intuitive selves. We are a little bit naturally closer, like with our feminine energy at our cores. We are a bit more naturally tuned into being receptive. And I'm wondering if anyone's had a Halloween experience like I just shared. I'd love to hear about it. And I just have seen, it's like this was once such a meaningful celebration of gleaning so much divine wisdom from this darkness, like getting ready for winter, getting ready for this season of self-reflection and going within and making preparations. But it is true that even in that Celtic celebration, and it was called Samhain, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but even in that original celebration, there was this edge to it that does echo so much more loudly in what we see today as like how Halloween's broken down. And back then, they actually did used to dress up as ghosts in this way to ward off other spirits. And I find that to be fascinating because to me, it's like everything superstitious is something of a disservice because it speaks to like us being powerless. It speaks to us needing to rely on something that has no real value, is not really based in, it's based in separation rather than unity, which automatically kind of makes it and gives it an energy frequency of powerlessness, which is untrue, right? And so even back then, there was that nature to the celebration where it was like they would don these like ghoulish costumes in the hopes that they would ward off these evil spirits and have an easier time of things. And that is like the pinnacle of Halloween that I wish we could all kind of like just release away. It's that superstition. It's like the fear of these ghouls, the fear of these spirits. And we have to protect ourselves by trying to ward something separate from ourselves off. And I understand that. I grew up terrified of everything I clairvoyantly used to see and still see. And I actually had to do a lot of work around that as an adult. I actually had to, like, I'm a spiritual mentor, yet I am still spiritually mentored. And I actually had to do a ton of work on this subject with my mentor, even just recently. And the way that she taught me how to rise up and out of my fear of anything separate from me that I might perceive. And I would do this in the dark. And it really had a tremendous impact on my growth. I would meditate in the dark. I would allow myself to see everything I did not want to see. And when something would arise, I would actually hold us both in the knowing that we were one. And I would actually say it. And there was this one instance where, a being did come, and it was what I would call, scary looking. And it was a surprise. I didn't see it come in. I was looking in the mirror. There was just a tiniest bit of light, and there the being was. And I did it. I held this being in my heart space. And I was saying, like, I am you, you are me, we are one. We are God. We are unconditional love. And I didn't really know what to expect from this. And what actually happened was kind of interesting. It's not that this being just melted away or disappeared, but I was actually able to communicate, and I didn't mean to. I didn't have any expectation, which I think was helpful. But in sitting there and holding this being in this space, all of a sudden, and this is claircognizance, I'm also very claircognizant. All of a sudden, I actually knew what the being desired. I knew what it wanted, and it was nothing like I had assumed. The being did not want to hurt me. It did not want to drain me. That was a big one of mine. Like I've been, in the last couple of years, like, yes, I have a bright light, right? All of us light workers do. And that being, I would think, it would want to drain me. And in an instant, I knew it did not want to drain me. It actually was seeking help, and it wanted to change. It wanted help to change its energetic frequency. And I just suddenly knew that after holding this space. And then I intuitively went along with it, and I kind of like knew what to do. And I assisted this being. And but there is so much superstition linked to Halloween. And I really do believe the one thing all superstition has in common is that sense of separation. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to know, because superstition can have such a hold on people. And it kind of reminds me of Dumbo's feather. One of my friends is very into talismans. And on the one hand, they help her. She has a belief in them. But on the other hand, as I kind of talk to her sometimes, I'm like, I wish you would try, just even try, like in a meditation, to see that the power you're drawing, it's not actually coming from that bracelet. It's actually coming from within. And that is my deepest belief. It comes from this near-death experience. My deepest belief is that you are God, that you actually are holy God, just embodied and unaware. But if we can drop into it, if we can remember, we too have access to all the dimensions, to all of our true senses, if we could only remember. And those superstitious kind of modalities, it's like they support separation, and they kind of encourage a sense of like a powerlessness that I don't believe is true. There's this other aspect also of Halloween where it's a little bit of this culturally accepted loophole for us to celebrate or explore our shadow selves. And you see this a lot of times, like it's all right to be interested in murder and people being killed and serial killers and all this kind of dark behavior, witchcraft, and even metaphysical dark stuff like that witchcraft, like spell casting, like hauntings, like extraterrestrials and abductions, alien abductions. Or I was doing an event yesterday, and it was kind of a gathering of friends, and it was, under the guise of Halloween. And I volunteered to read tarot cards. And it was so funny because I've known a lot of these people for so long, and they almost all of them asked me, "Oh, so you're a tarot reader?" And I was like, "No, not really. Like I do read cards as visual cues for my work, but I'm not a tarot reader. I was never trained in some specific way. I'm just clairvoyant and I visually attune to anything. And I find that tarot cards are a really good, almost like a learning cue, especially when I'm connecting with somebody. I can join our energies, and in that enmeshed energy, I can go to the card that best represents how that person's energy feels. And I can do really good work around that. But I had a woman last night and she actually said to me, you know, I actually do have my own tarot deck. She said, but I have to hide it from my priest. I said, really? I said, what does he, you know, what does he say? And she said, well, he just doesn't think it's, I forget the word she said, but it was almost like pure. That somehow was impure versus a prayer, I suppose, which is pure. And Sue just wrote, interesting, never really thought about Halloween that way. Not really into it besides the fun of pumpkins fall, donuts, cider, and candy. I know, right? That part is really fun. I do love this season. There is just this sense of it where we don't actually need a loophole. That's what I would challenge you to consider. That if there is a part of you that's interested in murder, then investigate it. It's natural to be curious about all human conditions. She just wrote, nope, like not interested in murder. But the general momentum of what we call God is to press outwards into form, encompassing the full spectrum of all, like capital A, all, which includes literally everything. So that energy, the other impetus for that energy also is to merge. And in that energy of merging, that is where I really ignite with curiosity. Sue just wrote again, I don't even watch scary movies. It's funny, when my kids were not sleeping, both of them had a hell of a time when they were babies. They had terrible colic. And when I was not sleeping, I really, like for several months, I probably slept no more than an hour and a half at a time, sprinkled throughout the day. And I actually used to watch scary movies because I'd become like even gray in my skin tone. I was so off. I had no circadian rhythm. I had no help. I really kind of had died on the inside. Hi, Courtney. Oh, I'm so happy. And Courtney, I was looking up Byzantine Empire, by the way. You definitely do have a connection with ancient Rome. I just want to say that. But I used to watch scary movies because they were like when you see in the movies, when people put those paddles on someone, when they're having heart failure, and it brings them back. It charges them with life force, with electricity, and it brings it back. I used to watch scary movies to do the same. I don't think I could handle that today. That was, like 8 years ago, but I used to actually use them like a tool. And I just see so often there is such judgment. Like I'm curious. I remember I've been curious about pedophiles. How is that possible? How could somebody do that? What is the mindset? I am curious about the human condition. And it's natural for us to be curious, especially about the far reaches of the human condition that we are not exposed to, that we don't have experience with. I was curious about witches decades ago. Well, why? Well, that was different. I resonated with it. I had encyclopedias of rocks before I even knew what a witch was. So there are all sorts of reasons we might feel curiosity about something, but just because you're interested in My best friend in the world is damn near obsessed with serial killers. She's not a serial killer. She has no serial killer tendencies. She has actually she's one of the most spiritual people I know. Yet she is really freaking interested in serial killers. We have such a judgment. Our initial knee-jerk reaction is so typically judgment of self. So I would just say it's like some of these behaviors that we feel like we're allowed to unleash for Halloween. I would say get rid of the division. Halloween is not a magical loophole. It's potentially something in ourselves that we need to become neutral with. Courtney just said, I'm also obsessed with scary movies, but I get scared to admit this. That's interesting. Why would you be scared to admit that? It's really not that stigmatized. And Sue just wrote, I relate to witches, LOL. Do wonder why people do what they do. I know, I mean, it's really like I studied this in college. I was a culture anthropologist. I love it. I want to know. And you see, there's this, it's been divided up. It's been like, I'm seeing like right now, police tape around Halloween. Like on this night, it's all right to embrace your shadow self. It's all right to embrace some fragment of yourself that would otherwise be deemed unacceptable by you for some reason. With women, we see this with sexuality. Like there's a tendency to have really sexual costumes as if it's all right. And tonight, I won't judge myself, you know? And I invite each one of us to take a look at where are we judging ourselves? What kind of behavior are we curious about? Or what is it? You know, there's something in us that we judge that Halloween is this fake kind of Dumbo's feather, that it's all right to put that on the table tonight. And whatever that is for you, I would just say, I would love for each of us to go into a meditation and to bring whatever behavior it is or whatever other kind of human behavior it is. Maybe it doesn't have to do with you. But to allow yourself to just be interested in it or want to embody it. Or if you want to dress in a sexual costume, then before you go out and you do that, sit in meditation and really allow yourselves to connect with your sacral chakra and your sexuality, and allow yourself to be like, I'm excited. I am going to look hot. Like I'm going to be the sexiest cat you've ever seen. Whatever it is, like if that's what you want to do, then I say actually go into it, dive into it, and allow yourself to know I want to be sexy tonight. And let yourself connect to your own sexuality rather than have false courage to do so from the Dumbo feather of Halloween. But rather be like, no, I am sexy. I have got that in me. I have this costume and I look really good in it. And that is a part of me. Rather than portioning it off. See, it's like rather than splintering it off and blaming it on Halloween. Actually bring it in. Come into union with that part of yourself. It is beautiful. Women are beautiful. Even our lines are beautiful. We are so sexy. And I just invite you, like, instead of like donning Dumbo's feather, actually sit down and connect and become one with your own sexuality and own it and embody it and have it be an extension of you, rather than something that is kind of like peg-legged onto this loophole of Halloween. Yeah, and Sue just said she also wore a lot of costumes that she would not normally wear. Yeah, it's so, I mean, it's so common. And Courtney just wrote, I relate and get scared because I have a fascination with darker things and maybe it's not kosher. But I love what you said. Just embrace it and try to understand the human condition. Yes, like the judgment of these dark things, that's the problem. It's like, I'm fascinated by it too. I'm fascinated by so many things. Guys, I'll be very honest with you. You know, I've got experiences when I was little where, and again, this is something, it's like, this is helpful for me to do with you. One of the things I was going to take to my grave was that, not only do I believe in extraterrestrials, if you've been with me, if you've ever heard any of my other videos, or if you've ever worked with me, you know that. But I have had experiences of having gone with them. And that will sound jarring and discrediting to some of you. However, it just simply is my experience. And what's amazing to me about that is this. I have had to go through many, many dark nights of the soul to get where I am today, to speak openly about all of this in the way that I'm doing. And I have had these memories of extraterrestrial beings. And when I was little, I have vivid memories. I'm 41. I should not be able to remember crystal clear memories back from when I was, say, 5 or 7 years old, as if they happened yesterday. And I've done a lot of work around this, but I wasn't even able to access the full spectrum of memories of all those events until I had come really far on this path of living authentically and in union with myself. And I actually was able to open up to these memories the most after I had actually ended a relationship that from the beginning, I was worried I wouldn't have the strength to end if I needed it to. And I've got a lot around this. My marriage had ended. We were together for 14 years and it was devastating. And I had always been afraid, am I going to have the strength to end any next relationship, or am I going to go back to that old way of being too afraid to be alone? And I actually was able to end this relationship that I knew needed to be ended. And it was huge, and I knew it. It was me declaring, I will never live that way again. I will always honor myself completely in any sexual relationship I'm in. And immediately after ending that relationship, I actually had the largest opening and re-memory of the memories I did have. So from what I can see, with each step we take to live authentically, and to me, and maybe to you, let me know if you do relate to this. It takes courage, because there is always a seeming threat of having somebody find us not acceptable. If I strip off another layer and I show you my true self, what if you don't find that acceptable? What if you judge that? Will I be able to withstand that? What if you leave? And like for me to say here tonight, this is the first time I've ever said this, and I'm really grateful this is happening. It's the first time I've ever said it in this manner, that I have my own experiences, having gone places with these celestial beings. When I was little, all the time, and I didn't understand it back then, and it terrified me. And my memories were actually somewhat distorted, as they were remembered through the lens of a child that did not have any capacity to really glean anything spiritual from the situation. It was just scary. And now today, I'll be completely honest with you guys. Just last night, one of these celestial beings helped me. I was in my astral form, and I spent last night with one of my guides who is a mantis being. And do you guys know what he was helping me with? Straight up, he was helping me with my live streaming. I'm not even kidding. You guys have no idea what's gone down with that. Actually, maybe you do. Maybe you saw me live streaming for an hour plus with an AV guy in my house last week. So this is a big night for me too. I did not expect to say that. Really didn't, but I'm very grateful I did. And I just know I have done so much work around best friending my younger self, around accepting myself. And this is somewhat shamanic too, bringing these pieces of yourself back to roost, bringing these like shadow pieces of yourself that you kind of turn your back on and that maybe you can integrate with under the guise of something like Halloween, but actually catching yourself and being like, wait a second, no, I am going to own all of me. I am going to bring all of who I am into my heart space and back together again. And they're actually showing me an image of Humpty Dumpty. Sue just said she's been doing shadow work. It's really hard. Yeah, it's so hard. But you know what? I have actually, with the work I did around best friending my younger self, because I still have terrible judgment on myself and terrible fear of what you think. Doing this, shamanic based work, it actually has afforded me some of the most abrupt, visceral change. It is so hard, actually, but it also brings about significant and pretty swift results. So that is what I wanted to talk about tonight. And I wanted to encourage each of us to scan the horizon of our personalities. This is all in personality, our likes, our dislikes, our fears, right? Our personalities are awesome. They are divinely perfect and they are divinely purposed. We're here on earth to help. If you're watching this video, I know you're a light worker, which means you have incarnated to help. And if you're here to help, you need two things. You need a body and you need a personality. You need a story. So I'm here, I've got my body. My story is that of Susan Dyer. We are not meant to transcend or out-spiritualize our egos. They are requisites for being here and doing the work that we're called to do. The real beauty and the grace happens, though, when our personalities serve our soul selves. That's kind of the right configuration. It's not to kill or ascend out of our egos. That's inaccurate. It's to work in tandem and it's to work in that kind of an order where my story and my personality is serving my greater purpose, my soul self. That's really the goal here. And in order to do that, we really have to bring warts and all facets of who we are, all of our likes, all of our dislikes, all of our past experiences, all of our mistakes, all of our fears, all of our anxieties, everything you could possibly think of. If you're thinking of negative and positive, if you're thinking of duality in that way, the way to take our power back and remember our divinity is to bring it all in, all parts of ourselves, into our heart space with full acceptance. Think about what a different flow such self-acceptance would create. Instead of there being knots or splinters or divides, and for those of you who can see energy, you can see these presences. They are just as real as the screen you're watching. These parts of ourselves that we feel shame around, they register just as physically as a hammer and a nail. You can see in your energetic body, you can see these points that connect back to shame or fear. I mean, our energetic bodies, our light bodies, which is basically almost like our spiritual skeleton, if you will. You can see all of these pain points in your energy. And every time we bring a piece of ourselves back home, back into our heart in acceptance, if you could see it, your energy field heals. It is completely real. And so I just encourage you, especially women, because how laden with context and stigma is sexuality for our gender, right? It's just such an awesome time to take Halloween and to glean some true divine power from it. For any one of you watching, scan yourself, scan your behaviors, scan your personality and your story, and see, is there something here that you judge as being dark or amoral or weird, that you do feel compelled to explore or show to others under this banner of Halloween? And I encourage you to take it in a meditation and actually own it and be like, yeah, that is me. That's me too. That's me too. And it's all right. It doesn't mean anything more than I allow it to mean. Just like my best friend loves learning about different serial killers and the mindset of that and how they're caught and so forth. There's nothing similar in her that resonates to a serial killer, right? But with some of these less dramatic things, there is a judgment and we do push away. And whatever we resist persists. So I would love to hear this from you guys. I would love to hear what it is that you think may be coming up around Halloween, and to release it and to embrace it. I'm like, I didn't realize I was going to do it with you on camera. I just told you guys. So I've had experiences of what other people would call being abducted by extraterrestrial beings. I now know, having done decades of spiritual work, that was not the case, and that is not how it actually was. But again, that's an entire topic that's very marginalized, very stigmatized, and very oversimplified. So I hope this was helpful. I would love for us to really use Halloween to remember our divinity and to expand in our self-love and acceptance, because that is where the power comes from. That really is. I would love to hear your experiences. If you feel comfortable, come loop back to this video after you've done a meditation or two. Please do. I always read the comments. I always respond. If you like this video, if you find it's interesting, share it with somebody. I want us to have really cool head-scratching convo. And thank you. And if you're a woman, please join my Facebook group. We do a live Q&A about everything spiritual, and that is every Thursday night. And I answer questions, and we stay on, and I do a quick tarot and angel reading at the end of that session for everybody too. So thank you guys. Just remember, you are God. And if that sounds wild but kind of exciting, then go with it, because it's true. And all of us are beyond powerful enough to become sovereign spiritual beings. So I'm so grateful that you're here, and I will see you next week, same time. Thank you guys so much. Take care.